We are on, and let me go on Facebook. And it's taken a moment. Hello?
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, I don't know why it did that. Okay. All right. Good, good, good. Yay, we're all set. All right,
Okay.
so welcome to our audience here. This is another wonderful speaker for our Dream Hour Descendant speaker series. So today joining us, we have Donna Guerra, and I have a quick bio to read on her. I was quite impressed myself and quite interested in what you have to say. So Ms. Guerra is a certified archivist with over 20 years experience as a professional and consulting archivist, working with university, government, and private archival repositories. She is an experienced researcher, an avid genealogist, and works for the preservation of family and organizational heritage and community history. She has traveled extensively to archives in Mexico and northern Spain to further understanding of her family and regional history. So I think we're in for a treat here, and I will turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you all for having me. And so my name is Donna Guerra. Guerra, if you'd like to anglicize it, that's fine with me. Um, and um, and so you just heard my bio. And so when I was asked, or I want to thank Antonia Castañeda, Dr. Antonia Castañeda, for recommending that I be a speaker because I don't usually do things like this. In fact, I'm, kind of timid about it. And I'll probably slip and slide a bit here today. So please just bear with me. I wanted to see it more like a casual kind of conversation and just a sharing of information of certain things along my journey of doing my family's history. And so, different considerations that have come up for me on ethnicity and identity and eventually really feeling like starting very locally and spreading out, I become a citizen of the world. And so that's been my journey with this pursuit. Um, and I also had sort of like a working title of it, like journeys without clear destinations, because um, like many of us, when and it happens with many Mexican American families, one, we don't end up becoming curious about it so much, except for when we get older. And by then, perhaps we've lost our direct link to the past, meaning our parents, or perhaps they're not in a state where they can remember and share with you, or perhaps they're not interested in going backward, and I have encountered people in different genealogy groups that we have to make them tell us what happened. And I really, I do not feel that way. I feel like there's got to be a reason. I'd love to know, of course, but there's got to be a reason why certain people of our elders do not feel like sharing. And I think we have to respect that. So yeah, there's a loss, but I just, I don't know. Clearly, and often it's because there's pain involved, pain in the memories, and certainly that was part of my family's legacy. So I'm going to start by I'm going to share my screen, um, and share a little bit of where is that, of this
Miss
PowerPoint, some
Guerra,
images I stuck in there.
excuse me.
Pardon?
Hold on just a moment,
Yes?
because for some reason it's saying that we logged out.
Oh.
I don't know what happened. I'm not sure if we got kicked out. Can they still see us? Is this still streaming?
Can your IT person contact you?
I know.
I have a little label on the top here that says live, but maybe it should, I don't know what that means.
Okay, well, let's just continue on. We'll continue on.
Yeah, maybe if your IT person could confirm with you, then that would be good. But
Yes.
anyway, and again, as I just said, I think of this in terms of journeys with no clear destination, and the facts and the fictions and discovering where I'm from. There is something called a land acknowledgement that a lot of people have been doing. Sometimes it feels very trendy, but actually I think it's very important, and it's especially important in this particular Descendant series. We have, I know, as some of the Descendant speakers, some Native Americans, American Indians, and only two other Tejano speakers, unfortunately, but they're fabulous ones, Carmen Tafoya and Norma Cantu. And so I think especially for us, this is very important to make this sort of statement, to create awareness, to let people know that, when we say we were always here, this is what this means. And when Mexican Americans say we didn't cross the border crossed us, this is what we mean. And so I'll just read it. I got this one from a University of Texas at Austin Native American and Indigenous Studies website. So I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the indigenous lands of Turtle Island, the ancestral name for what is now called North America. Moreover, I would like to acknowledge the Alabama Cushara, Caddo, Carrizo Comecrudo, Huahuiltecan, Comanche, Kickapoo, Lipanapache, Tonkawa, and Isleta del Sur Pueblo, and all the American Indian and indigenous peoples and communities who have been or have become a part of these lands and territories in what we now call Texas. Okay, so we can just think about that a little bit. So this is the land we're on. This is an 1820 map of the Estados Unidos de Mexico, where I'll use my cursor here. You can see here's the panhandle and then Texas, and you see the shape there, and it goes like that. And so Texas was called, in this map, there was one of the 19 states in Mexico at the time, and it was called Coahuila y Texas. So this even brings more vividly into focus what we mean when we talk about the border crossed us through different negotiations, some ethical, some unethical, some legal, some shady. Texas eventually became its own republic, and then eventually part of the United States, and the territory of Mexico became, more delineated along the border of the Rio Grande / Rio Bravo River. So again, this is the land we're on. The Tejano descendants, no matter what we call ourselves, Mexicano, Americano, Tejano, Chicano, this is our birthright right here. So again, just to highlight it even further, that whole map that you were just looking at, in the red is the state of Coahuila y Texas. So that's particularly important to us as Tejanos. So I'll make another statement. So we are also on the land of the Tejanos, who were here as indigenous and mestizos before the border eventually crossed us at Rio Bravo, Rio Grande. And we lost a lot of our original original land grants through coercive land sales and swindles and some outright land theft and robbery. And this robbed the Tejanos of their legacy of ranching and raising cattle. First, there were the Mexican vaqueros, remember, from whom the Anglo-Texas cowboy learned his livelihood. So those are the acknowledgments that I would like to make there. I'm going to stop sharing and just talk a little bit about identity, really, and my encounters with that over the years. Now, these days, I don't really experience struggle so much. Maybe that's just getting older, becoming more comfortable. I'll claim a little bit of maturity there. You know, I don't really struggle with the way I navigate my identity anymore, because I see it as more like geometry than algebra. Like it's kind of, my identity shapeshifts actually dependent on me moving through time and place. But some labels that I have become friendly with, because there are quite a few that one could adopt as an identity. Some labels have been Mexican American, obviously. Pocha, that's an interesting one. Tejana, Chicana, Mestiza. And each of these labels speak to angles of this beautiful, multifaceted jewel that is my identity. With all of that, I will say that I have encountered difficulties in the past, more so than now. For instance, many of us grew up with shame, though, because for so long we either, one of the reasons is because we've been so deliberately left out of histories. Or we've been forced to kind of live in a conspicuous absence, or we're just openly denigrated as a people, you know. I do feel those leave historical marks on a person. And I'm the kind of person that feels when one of us hurts, all of us hurt, you know? And so, but I remember one of my first moments of shame was when I was 9 years old in a local high school on the west, near southwest side. And there was a little boy that I had a huge crush on, and he was an Anglo boy. And, you know, he liked me too. But I remember us sitting on the little curb by, you know, the schoolyard, and we were kind of, you know, shyly talking about it. He goes, well, I would like you to be my girlfriend, but my parents wouldn't like it. And so I was just, you know, that was the first real personal slam with shame, really, and bewilderment that I experienced. Of being lesser than somehow, you know. And as an adult, not that many years ago, here's another instance. I was at a local shopping mall, and I was browsing in a guayabera shop. You know, guayaberas are the nice cotton dressy shirts that are so prevalent in Mexican warmer cultures, warmer locales. And so I was browsing, and I was, you know, he started speaking to me in Spanish, and I'm not a native speaker. It's my second language. Spanish is I learned it because I wanted to. And I guess I stumbled over a couple of words, and he said, shame on your parents for not teaching you Spanish. And I had such a rise of fire in my body. I was so angry at this guy. At first, I wasn't sure why, but I also experienced some shame because I think one of the worst things we can do from Mexican American to Mexican American is shame each other for our levels of literacy in Spanish. I think it's wrong. I think, you know, we come in all varieties, and, you know, we should just, you know, be respectful of that. But in any case, I was so angry at this guy. And I said, suddenly, like, I felt like the sword coming up through my body. And I responded to him and I said, no, you should be ashamed of yourself. And I just, you know, but I was very kind of rational, but clearly angry. And I said, no, you should be ashamed of yourself. You have no idea about my parents. You have no idea what their life experiences were like or what led them to emphasize English being our family's first language. You know, that for them, the mastery of the English language was really important. And so, and I said, I will never buy anything in your shop again. So that was that. Yeah, I haven't gone in that shop. And I just thought, what a terrible man. Because I don't think we need to be treating each other like this, you know? Um, in my family, you know, the only grandparents I knew and grew up with were my maternal grandparents, and my grandmother, who was born near Monterrey, Nuevo León, had literacy in English, but was always most comfortable speaking in Spanish. So at times she would speak a little Spanish, and I would answer in English, and we understood each other perfectly. My grandfather was born in the U.S., however, so he always spoke English to us, and of course we responded in English. So for a lot of my adult life, for 24 years, I'm from here, born and raised San Antonian, but I lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts, you know, which is like the stellar place for, you know, great universities and intellectuals. You know, they even have a T-shirt, you know, 02 for the zip code 02138, smartest zip code in the United States. So, but there I was living, and for this chunk of time, I was working at Harvard University as an archivist there. And while I was there, I felt these feelings would come up of that lesser than feeling. I guess we call them also, you know, inner colonization. You know, and so I. I experienced different degrees of that that feeling unworthy at different times. And that brought with it, like, I felt, you know, this poverty mind, like I'm poor in culture, I must be poor in many things, you know. And so, and I'll never forget, how the surge of pride that I would feel. There was a Harvard student mariachi group called Mariachi Veritas, and when they would advertise their concerts, I would just go, yes, I'm going. You know, there weren't very many demonstrations of Mexicanidad where I was living, you know, and so that was very exciting. And another exciting thing that happened for me is that I got to meet and audit a couple of courses by, maybe I could count them on, maybe there were 3 Mexican American professorships at Harvard, and he was one of them. And he worked dually in the Harvard Divinity School and in the anthropology department. His specializations were, you know, Mesoamerican cosmology and spirituality, and also borderland studies. He offered this one course that I audited called Borderland Studies, and he talked about us as borderlands people. So I want to do another screen share and share with you a little bit of a snippet of his his talking about what he calls, can you see this? Can you see this?
No, I don't see anything.
Okay, one moment. Sorry. I'm sorry about that. Okay, I think this will work. Does that work?
Yes, yes, I see it.
Okay. So he talks about this a lot in his talks. His name is Professor David Carrasco, and he talks about his Aztec moment. And I remember when he shared about that in his Borderlands class, I was just so taken with it. And so he grew up in Laredo, I believe, or El Paso, sorry, either one, and a Mexican American. But he had this opportunity because his father was a basketball star. The Mexican Olympics called him to stay in Mexico City for a while, and his father took him, and his father was going to coach some of the basketball players for the Olympics. So you can see here, he's talking about his Aztec moment, and here he starts to talk about what that meant to him as a 13-year-old boy.
In this document, there's 14 sacred bundles, and we see people not only carrying them, but opening them up and using them in certain rituals, indicating that this document was as much an insider document that has come to us as anything else. You know, I'm being a little dry. I wonder if somebody could bring me some water at some point. I should have taken care of this myself. So let me begin with my Aztec moment. I don't know, let me just find out here. How many of you have been to Mexico City? I'm really glad to hear that, because usually if I put up, I have very few. If I say how many have been to Paris, it's 5 times as many. So I'm glad that you made it to Mexico City. So here's downtown Mexico City. This is the great Zocalo of Mexico. There's the National Cathedral. Here's the presidential palace. I'm going to tell you what I call my Aztec moment. It really came to me a couple of years ago. I was at a medical conference in Mexico with a number of Mexican-American doctors and nurses, and we were having dinner. And one of the women around the table said, you know, I have an Aztec moment once a week. Everybody said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, you know how it is. It's when I become aware that, you know, my identity, my family, my color, my language, my lineage teaches me that I'm not black and I'm not white, but I'm mixed. I'm a mestizo, I'm a mestiza. I'm somebody who comes from a mixture of traditions. It's important for us to say that we have this mixture in us. And she says, well, I call this my Aztec moment, where I remember that I am not in one of these categories. I'm something that's emerging in the awareness of people in the United States. And it goes back on one side to the Aztecs, or to indigenous people, because a lot of Mexicans are not Aztec descendants. And I said, you know, that's really good, because I remember my first Aztec moment. I was 13 years old. I was living in Mexico City. My father had been invited by the Confederación Deportiva Mexicana to come to Mexico to train Mexican coaches in preparation for the Olympic Games. And my aunt, Milena, took me for the first time to the National Museum of Archaeology and History, which at that time was not over in Chapultepec Park, where it is now. It's right down the street, on Moneda Street. And here I am, 13 years old. I go into this museum, and I start to see some of this stuff. I see the great calendar stone. Fantastic piece of sculpture, incredibly detailed. I see some of the Maya jade. I see some of the pictorials. I see these masks. I see images of Aztec goddesses. I see incredible stuff in what's called the Aztec Hall. And I begin to, as the afternoon wears on, I begin to have this kind of disturbance inside of me. And I remember that I was really upset about something. And I went out into that Zocalo and I walked around, and what came to me, even at the age of 13, was an interior struggle, because on the one hand, seeing these materials made it clear to me that in the United States, growing up as I did, that I had internalized a lot of shame about my Mexican roots, about my Mexican background. After all, if you wanted to study civilization in those days in this country, in the schools, it was the Greeks, it was the Romans, it was maybe the Egyptians, maybe the Chinese, but Mexicans. In Mesoamerica, that wasn't something that had civilization, had sophistication, had the complete complex cosmologies. Oh no, that was something for Moctezuma's revenge, or I remember the Marine song, you know, from the halls of Moctezuma to the shores of Tripoli. It was a place of food, maybe beautiful women, maybe games, but it wasn't a place of sophistication and civilization. What came to me that afternoon was, man, I feel some shame about this, and yet at the same time there was another competing feeling. And the competing feeling was, no, wait a second, this is really interesting. There's something to study here. There's something to know. That Mexico had some cultural depth. It had monumentality. It had something. I walked back out and I looked around and I began to see, I not only got the shame, but I'm very curious about this. I'm interested in this. Maybe there's something to be known here. Maybe this is as important as these other civilizations. And in time, of course, I came to understand that this place that I was standing on was built on this place. That in fact, this building right here was built right on top of this building, that this depth and so forth was still pushing through. And that Aztec moment didn't show me that I was an Aztec. It showed me that I had this mixture in me. I had this kind of borderlands in me. I had something that was periphery. Later on, when I studied Victor Turner and he talked about this notion of liminality and marginality, I came to discover that having this marginality, this mixture and so forth in me was not something to be shameful about. It actually gave me a certain perspective, not only on what it was to be a borderlands person, but it gave me a perspective on the people in the center who didn't know what it was like to be on the periphery. And I felt, I got a little epistemological advantage here, especially when I come to a place like the University of Chicago, which was a certain type of powerful center. And now I'm at Harvard, I really feel like I have an advantage on those people because they think of themselves still in the center.
So sorry, that was a little long, but I just feel that the way he expresses that sentiment is what so many of us feel on some level, being Mexican American, being, having Mexican heritage and being in the United States. So I wanted him, I let him speak for me. So yeah, we're borderlands people. We're this mix. We've got all these different perspectives. It's messy. Why not enjoy it? This is what I feel. So there are different ways we can frame, who we are and being kind of a mix of things. And I remember that I had a nice conversation with Don Tomas Ibarra Frausto, who's a very well-known cultural critic of Chicano visual arts and expressive culture, who lives here in San Antonio. He's from San Antonio. And so I was thinking about something, and I said, yeah, when they say, ni de aquí, ni de allá, well, we're not from here and we're not from there, like sort of cultivating a lost feeling, like a nowhere feeling. He says, no, it's sí de aquí y sí de allá. Yes, we're from here, and yes, we're from there. And that always changed me. It was such a great thing for me to hear, to help me reframe, so that it's something wonderful and positive to have this mestizaje, so I wanted to share that cheerful something with you. As far as I'm going to screen share once again. So remembering that when we do our genealogy, we have to find out who we are as a people, and we start from ourselves always. We go backwards in generations and in time. So, why isn't that clicking? Okay, so this is a map of that larger map that I showed you of the 1820 Estados Unidos de Mexico, where I've marked my paternal journey and where it has gone through time and place. So here we start in San Antonio, right? That's my family. This is for my paternal line now. And then my father was born in Kennedy, Texas. So right here. And then his father was born here in Realitos or San Diego. Either one, sometimes I don't have but they're very close by. So there are a lot of ranchos out there, and that's the people I come from. And then in Roma, we had a lot of relatives come through. So you see, we are always getting closer to the river, right? The river. And then the other side from Mier, Tamaulipas, and Tamaulipas is a state in Mexico. And so that's where a lot of Guerra's come from. And then from this place called Marin in Nuevo Leon, you can see the name of the state. Then in Salinas, Victoria, real nearby. And then in Monterrey. This is all on the outskirts, really. These were little ranchos on the outskirts of the city of Monterrey. And then there's Monterrey, and then basically Mexico City was the landing point for my paternal ancestors. From before they came to Mexico City, they came from northern Spain, a place called Asturias, and specifically Llanes Asturias. So just to give you a sense of where my people have traveled, my paternal line has traveled. That's my great-grandfather, Jerónimo Guerra. He was born in Mier, Tamaulipas in 1875, and he moved with his father, Jose Angel, and his mother, Mauricia Rodriguez, to Roma, Texas, and Tienditas Ranch. And then he later settled in Kennedy, Texas, and gave birth to my grandfather, and then my father was born also in Kennedy. So this is him in his, I like to call it his best vaquero wear, you know. See this, even the style of hat is from that era of cowboys, of Mexican cowboys. And he's standing, you can see in front of, there's boards down here. It's just a sheet that was placed over some boards for when the itinerant photographer would come to town and take people's formal portraits. So I had to go looking to find, because of course the oral histories go away after, you know, a certain time. So I had to go and look in different databases called FamilySearch.org, and it's a free, the records are free, but you have to register and sign up. And so this creates a whole different thing that I won't go into here so much, but when you start, you're searching in Spanish. And so you do have, it does help to have a handle on Spanish. And so this is his civil birth record. So, you know, Mexico, for many years, all of the records originated from the Catholic Church until 60, when the civil registry was born. So then you would have additional, you know, like municipality records and state records outside of the church, where you only got, you know, sacramental records, basically baptism, marriage, and death. In the civil records, you would get birth and death, and wills, which are also very interesting to search through. So I transcribed his, I've gone through and done this for lots and lots of records of my ancestors. And then I also, just to figure out when they got here, I've searched through the censuses of the United States. This is a 1900 Duval County census. And it shows, here is Jose Angel, my great-great-grandfather, who's the head of the family, Mauricia, his wife, Jerónimo, my great-grandfather, and then some siblings, Vicenta and Francisco. So one of the challenges, and I won't stay too long on it because I'm running out of time, is that, you know, these get transcribed into an index often by non-Spanish speakers or by people who can't read handwriting very well, or a combination of both. And I had a hard time finding this record because they couldn't read that as Jose Angel. They wrote something entirely different, and that was Famco, and it's Francisco. So, you know, it takes a lot of time to do this sort of work. Going back further, this is a 1744 marriage document of for my fifth paternal great-grandfather. And so, and this was from Monterrey, Nuevo León. So they were already back there. And then this was one of the earliest records that I could find in Mexico. It was from Antonio Guerra Cañamal Porras. Says he was born in Asturias, as you can see, but when he got to Mexico, he married another Spaniard woman, but he married a woman there. And so his marriage record is in Mexican records, and they got married at the city cathedral in 1624. So that's pretty much my relatives on the paternal side got there in the 1600s. I'm going to skip that and just try to start with my mother a little bit. She was born in San Antonio. But her mother, my maternal grandmother, was born around in Mexico, I should say, because now I have conflicting records about where she was actually born. But that's to be expected too. Sometimes you hit what they call brick walls and you can't get any further. Interestingly, when I did find her birth certificate here for San Antonio, I found out that my grandmother had been a pecan picker, it says. So my grandmother never told us anything about shelling pecans, but we know that in San Antonio, that was a big deal, and that was the occupation that was available, the work that was available to many, many people on the Mexican-American west side of San Antonio in the early 1920s, 30s, this time frame. So, you learn things from records that your relatives don't tell you. And it's really worth looking. And that's a picture of my mother at a local West Side studio, with the backdrop. And she's looking wonderful and wearing her fine little clothes. So also in what I was able to figure out with some of my grandmother's maternal side is that there was a mulatto in her legacy. These were my third great grandmother, Cayetana Acosta, married Feliciano Paredes, a mulatto, in Guanajuato. And so, you just discover many, many things. And so, yes, we have African blood, and that's wonderful. So to stop, I'm just going to say that, I've also gotten very much into DNA testing. I've done all kinds of testing, and you just keep discovering. This takes you in so many directions that for my father, there's something called Y-DNA that only men have. And they have this strong genetic marker that's called their haplogroup. That's a simple way of describing it, but it tells you what, and that has it never changes. It has mutations along the way, but that fact never changes. And so it turns out he's got a Semitic haplogroup. So some people say Jewish DNA. Well, I don't like to call it Jewish DNA because that's a religion and DNA doesn't have religion. But you can say it does relate to most of those peoples. In the database that my father's in, all the matches, they're either, Sephardic Jews or Ashkenazi Jews. And that's all the matches. And so, and there are some in Mexico too. And that's this whole family of males, male lineage that goes on. And so I shared that result with a woman, and she wrote me about it. She's a Semitic DNA expert, and she does Jewish genealogy a lot. So she says, Donna, I am very excited about these results. It is because of the results that we know that at least part of your cluster has Sephardic roots. For you, the fact that you are on the same branch as Ashkenazi Jews means that nearly certainly your paternal Spanish ancestors were Sephardic Jews. For the Ashkenazi members of your cluster, it may mean that their ancestors were Sephardic Jews who fled the Inquisition to Eastern Europe, and over the next few hundred years, their descendants were absorbed into the Ashkenazi population, in many cases losing the knowledge that they have Sephardic roots. it depends on how long ago the most recent common ancestor you have lived. So if the common ancestor lived 500 to 800 years ago, they were likely Sephardic too. But if their common ancestor lived 1,000 years ago, it is possible that they were Jews from the Near East or Italy and migrated to Spain. So it's either, in either case, it's a case of people moving around, you know, in history and migrations that are always happening. And for my mother's haplogroup, I'll finish in a second. My mother's haplogroup, oh dear, dismiss. Okay, I think I'm fine now. And so for my mother's maternal haplogroup, that same marker, it's Native American. And that's really interesting too. And I see a lot of her matches, and they go into sort of like near the Yucatan area and places below, and then into Puerto Rico to Taino descendants. That's another Native American people in Puerto Rico. And so this whole, you know, exploration has just made me feel like, you know, I'm the family of humankind, you know, and so that's also part of my identity. And so I guess that's how I wanted to end it, you know, just to say that I have truly become a citizen of the world through all of my explorations. And I, you know, I think we would all find that if we did, especially DNA explorations, we would find the same thing. So thanks for listening, everybody.
Right, well, thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that. Very interesting. And I could definitely relate to quite a bit that you said there. I love your philosophy of saying when one of us hurts, all of us hurts. Definitely want to live with that sense of community. You know, that's definitely a sense of community. And it was interesting that and I appreciate you sharing that story about your childhood and your first little crush and what happened with that. And was interesting to me was, as a woman of color, I had that exact same experience. And not too long ago, I would say about a month or two, my little niece, who's 7 years old, had that exact same experience. So I think that was interesting that we, you know, even though it's not a good experience, we all, as women of color, have that same shared exact experience. But yeah, so that really kind of stuck out to me, that we all have that shared experience, which I guess goes back to us all really having more in common with each other than we realize. So I just want to ask a few questions before I get you off here. And one thing is, do you have any projects coming up, major projects for 2021?
Yeah, that's, I think that I just continue following my instincts to, you know, within this pandemic, surely, you know, to be healthy and to not harm others or pose a threat to others in a health sense. But I also, you know, I work with the Esperanza Peace and Justice Center with their Museo del West Side, and on my spare time, outside of my job. And I really feel like that's very important work, because it's very much aligned with telling family histories, and important ones that we don't hear about, you know, talk about our histories getting suppressed or not included anywhere. We're bringing, you know, light to these individual family people and histories. And so I want to keep working on that a lot.
That sounds great. And let's see, what advice would you give someone who would like to explore their genealogy more?
Yeah. Can I just say, there is one question that I'd
Oh,
like to address in the Q&A. This
oh,
person asked, do you believe it is necessary to mention these identities? Only if it matters to you. I mean, I believe it's so individual. Um, you know, maybe give it some reflection, but if it doesn't feel meaningful to your life, then it isn't. It may become so, maybe it won't become so. So I just say to make it, I believe in all of these process as a person, just being organic about it and, say, okay, yeah, I know my identities are important to some people or they're meaningful in some way. And like I said, I have multiple ones and some of them don't involve ethnicity at all. Like I say, I'm a citizen of the world. I'm a human being, um, there are many identities one can have. So just keep it authentic for yourself. And if you don't feel like, I don't think there's a should here. So that's my response. I'm sorry. And then Tiffany, you said, oh, what do I recommend for going forward with this?
oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Someone who wanted to explore their genealogy more, what would be some advice that you could give them?
Right. Well, for me, I like to keep it in the facts. Some people, kind of go off into a fantasy thing like, oh, I was related to this king, and maybe they were, but some of them don't know. I would definitely recommend do not assume that any family trees posted in Ancestry and or FamilySearch.org, Ancestry.com or FamilySearch.org, or even on the internet are absolutely correct. You really do have to do your own fact checking. And again, start from your parents and what you know. Always start, from your parents and go backwards. If they're alive, talk to them and get a sense of the dates. Maybe they can't remember everything. So just get a sense of the names, any nicknames people went by, the dates that they lived, the places that they lived, and then you can start amassing. Start at least 2 generations back from your parents if that's possible, and then start digging on these online databases. But yeah, be mistrustful in a smart kind of way.
Right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate
Sure.
you sharing all your knowledge with us. And if someone wants to get in contact with you, how would they be able to do that?
So I'll say my email aloud slowly. You're welcome to contact me. My name again is Donna, Donna, last name Guerra, Guerra. My email is D. Amazon Morales, my mother's last name, Guerra, my last name Guerra 2001 at yahoo.com.
Great, great. And I'll see if we can also maybe put that down below
Yeah.
on when we have it on Facebook. So if they miss that, they can go back and write it
Okay.
down.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you spending this
Thank
time
you.
with us in the middle of your
Yeah, it was
day.
great.
And I really did enjoy your talk. I learned a lot. I definitely heard my story and your story, and and I'm not sure, if that's exactly what you wanted, but I definitely heard my story and your story.
Whatever people can take away, that's fine with me.
All right, thank you, and you have a great rest of your day.
You too. I look forward to Carmen Tafoya after this. She's a
Yes,
wonderful speaker.
yes, I'm excited.
Okay.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thanks.
Shall I
Bye.
just click leave? Shall I
Uh,
just click leave the meeting?
I
Is that what I
think
do?
so. I
Yeah.
think so.
Okay. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you.
Thanks.